is a story from Dean, and here's what Dean writes. For several years we lived out in the country where nothing much ever happened. My life was and is typical of most people. Our property begins at the bottom of a hill with our house on the opposite end atop a bluff. And the driveway is very steep and difficult to get up in bad weather. I used to work with mentally and physically handicapped adults in a classroom. There was one individual that had several disabilities, and he took a liking to me. He had surgery that resulted in complications, and sadly he passed away the following day. A few weeks after that, I started noticing some sounds late at night when I was in the office. I didn't think anything about it because we lived in the country, and there are lots of sounds that make no sense. And one night, while I was surfing the net, I turned around and saw what looked like a see-through floating white mass with long eyes and a droopy mouth. It was completely transparent, but it floated right near the door, and it wasn't moving. Needless to say, it scared me a bunch. Actually, I thought I had fallen asleep and I was dreaming. These occurrences started happening more and more as the weeks went by. I started talking to this ghost, but I never got any reply or outward response. After several weeks, I kept racking my brain trying to figure out why I was seeing this translucent image more and more. And then it finally hit me. It was the ethereal image of this man from my classroom who had passed away. There was a strange incident that involved him and me before he died. One day in the classroom, just weeks before his demise, he walked up behind me and patted my back. It was like some creepy ripples spread through my body, and it gave me goosebumps. I think he actually had physically passed something to me. I kept talking to this ghostly image that had first appeared in my office. I directed it to go home. Maybe this being was waiting for me to recognize it as my former student, and that it was now okay to pass on to the other side. It never came back again, but things were soon becoming more interesting. 2 weeks later, I started seeing a progression of images and ghosts going from my son's room on the north side of the house to my bedroom where my now ex was sleeping. There were all kinds of visuals streaming past. One looked like a gypsy. The man was short and had a typical hat of the 19th century and a heavy wool suit. And all these images were in gray tones with no color at all. One night I got up to go to the bathroom, and afterward I walked into the living room to get a drink. There was a white cloud hovering above a chair. Maybe logic would determine that it was a reflection through the window, but we always closed all the curtains before we went to bed. I walked over and placed my hands around it, and the orb felt cold and clammy. I was able to press my hands into something that seemed to be the consistency of a dense fog. There was a distinct temperature difference around that chair. One evening, my son came out of his bedroom and walked down the hallway to the family room, and he stopped and stared at me for a couple of minutes. He asked how I got there. He claimed that he just saw me back in the office sitting at the computer. Well, I'd been in the family room for well over an hour. We kept hearing bells from somewhere in the house, and cans would fall off the shelf. Our little Yorkshire Terrier would go into the kitchen and start growling and barking for no reason. And we coexisted for several years with these strange spirits. Not everyone was entertained by these so-called phantoms. Some visitors to our house, well, they never came back. They always felt uneasy. The house was 2 years old when we bought it, and the previous owners were more than happy to move out. They chose to build another place rather than to tolerate all the unearthly occupants they never invited to share their living space in the first place. I think the bluff that we were living on top of was an Indian burial ground, and the spirits were coming through me because of a man who touched my back and sent chills through my body. He knew he was not long for this world, and he gave me a part of him to help him pass on to get to his much-needed eternal rest. Robert A. Baker, a well-known skeptic, an author and investigator of paranormal events, was fond of saying, "There are no haunted places, only haunted people." Anyone who has ever had a paranormal experience would probably disagree with him, but I wonder if it's possible that his assertion contains a grain of truth. Why is it that some residents of a supposed haunted house can have dozens of paranormal experience while others living in the same home notice nothing unusual? It is as simple as varying levels of sensitivity to energy, which many people believe spirits to be. And that same spiritual energy and intelligence are the actual souls of once living people. In recent years, electronic equipment can measure environmental changes such as abnormally high levels of electromagnetic energy, changes in temperature and barometric pressure, and other common signs of paranormal activity are becoming popular tools for investigators. Readings from these machines can help confirm and verify impressions of people who are experiencing unusual activity. We moved out of that house a few months later, and since that time neither my son nor have I witnessed another ghost. A person sees things out of the corner of their eyes, but nothing as real as the experiences like we had. It was a house and not a home. It was a great location, but I knew there was something not right from the time we first saw it, and now we know what that was. Okay, that's the only story I'm going to have in this podcast. So if you want to click away to another video, go ahead. But I've got a couple things I wanted to say to the people who really follow along with this podcast and just let you know what's going to be going on for the next month or two, maybe 3. So I'm going to address something I've gotten a lot of comments on, maybe 2 or 3 things. One, why no videos of chickens and dogs? It's just nasty and muddy outside, and I just really don't feel like doing it. We've still got the chickens, we've still got dogs, and I still ride a bike every day with my dogs, but I just haven't been putting a GoPro on my chest to make those rides because it's so muddy and nasty, and I just kind of want to get through it and get it done and get to work. So that's why there's not any videos of that, but I will start doing that again. Number 2, people are asking, why are you doing shorts? Well, they're easy to do, they're quick, and with my workload right now, I can do one of those a day, easy. And I get a lot of comments from people. They're not people who normally follow this channel, but they're like, oh, you're making these stories up. No, I'm not making them up. They were either told to me or they're a little snippet from an email that I've gotten. And I asked people about 3 months ago to send me shorts, and some of those are shorts people have sent me. So I'm not just dreaming those up. I don't know if the writers are dreaming them up, but I'm not. So I'm just letting you know that. But they're cool little 60-second stories. So I don't know. Some people are like, don't do shorts. Well, how about if you don't like shorts, how about you don't watch shorts? I'm going to keep doing them because they're fun. And then last, I ran out of work, I don't know, a few months ago, and I was able to do a lot of stuff with this podcast. I was able to start the Steve Lilly podcast. I was able to do like 4 audiobooks. And I kept up with this podcast, and I kept putting content out, longer videos, 45 minutes or an hour, because I know that's what people like. However, now I'm just covered up with work again. So what I'll be doing for the next, to keep up with this podcast and continue to do what I love, which is read these stories, is maybe there'll be a shorter podcast for the next 60 days or so until I can work myself out of this jam. But I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep putting up videos and podcasts out on the podcast network, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, places like that. They'll just be shorter until I have time to do longer ones. And that's all that's going on. Nothing else is going on with me. Everything's just peachy and dandy. And I'm happy and I love doing this and I appreciate you all so much. And that's what's happening. So I'm just babbling. I could talk about several other things people have asked me questions about. And I don't know why anybody would be interested in what I'm doing. But as far as the podcast goes, that's what's going on. Everything's good. Podcast is just going to keep on going. I'm going to keep reading these stories because I love it. I absolutely love doing this. If there were just 10 of y'all still listening, I would keep doing it. There has to be at least 10. If it goes to 9, I may quit. I may just go back to just reading in my head, silently reading books. But until it gets down below 10, I'm just going to keep doing it. That doesn't look like that's going to happen, so I'm happy about that. But I kind of do it for me because I love it. And I'm not trying to please anybody. I'm just trying to give you something that gives you just a little element of entertainment 3 or 4 times a week. That's all this channel has ever been. That's all it's ever going to be. I'm going to do different things throughout the years. I'm going to keep doing this, but I have to change things up on occasion for me, because if it doesn't stay interesting for me, then I get bored with it and I won't want to do it. So hang with me. I think the little tweaks and changes that I make as time goes on will be enjoyable. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to say. Appreciate you guys listening. I'll probably have another one up tomorrow. So stand by. All right, thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next one.